Welcome everyone to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
So today's date, July 8th. We're using it as a bit of a lens, actually, a way to look at some really timeless wisdom.
Yeah, it's funny how a specific date can kind of anchor these big ideas.
Exactly. And the collection of ideas we've got today, well, on the surface, you wouldn't think they belong together. We're talking ancient scripture, like a psalm, then analysis of a classic gritty Western film.
Right, The Wild Bunch. Quite a jump.
Totally. Then some deep philosophy on love and suffering. And finally, some pretty practical modern advice on things like productivity and purpose.
It's quite a mix, isn't it? A really diverse stack of sources.
It really is. And that's kind of our mission for this deep dive, right? To pull out the really potent insights from these seemingly unconnected places.
Yeah, to sort of weave them together, see if we can find a coherent philosophy for, living a life that feels meaningful, a well-lived life.
We're aiming for those aha moments, where you suddenly see how these different threads connect and offer something genuinely useful.
Not just abstract ideas, but like practical tools you can actually use in your day-to-day life.
Exactly. The theme we're exploring is something like the architecture of meaningful action, courage, love, and purpose in daily life.
Ooh, I like that. Architecture. It suggests structure, a blueprint.
Right. A way to build a life with intention, with impact. So let's quickly run through that stack of sources again. First up, we've got Psalms 19, an ancient prayer, but it sets this surprisingly strong foundation.
Yeah, we'll unpack how that works. Then, like you said, we leap into Stephen Pressfield's take on that incredible scene from Sam Peckinpah's The Wild Bunch, 1969 film.
Pressfield's analysis is so sharp. It's about courage, but maybe not the kind we usually think about.
Definitely not. It's raw. Then from that sort of rough Western landscape, we shift gears again.
We do. We dive into Leo Tolstoy's Calendar of Wisdom. Some really profound thoughts on love, suffering.
And mixed in with quotes from Henri Amiel, too, who adds another layer. It really pushes you to think differently about love.
It does. And then finally, we bring it right up to the present day. We've got insights on, productivity, getting things done, purpose, but also how we sometimes fool ourselves.
Yeah, figures like Seth Godin, Coach Dan John, Sir William Osler, Ken Blanchard, offering that really grounded, actionable advice.
So the goal here for you listening is to give you a kind of shortcut, a way to see how courage in this big idea of love and just disciplined action, how they aren't just philosophical concepts.
They're practical tools, things you can actually use to navigate, all the messy contradictions life throws at you.
Tools to find maybe more genuine happiness, a clearer sense of purpose. We really want to focus on what truly matters and, crucially, how you can take these insights and weave them into your own daily choices.
So yeah, it's about building that architecture piece by piece.
Ready to dig in?
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's start laying that foundation. We're calling this first part the foundation. Courage as a catalyst for transformation. And it kicks off with that ancient prayer from Psalms 19.
Right. The line is, "Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable and pleasing in your sight, O Lord, my firm, immovable rock and my redeemer."
And that sounds very internal, doesn't it? Focused on thoughts, inner life.
Yeah.
How does that ancient idea set the stage for, courageous action out in the world? Seems like a bit of a leap.
Well, it's actually a really crucial first step. What this prayer does is establish the internal landscape needed before any meaningful external action can even happen. It's not just about what you do. It's about where that action is coming from. The Psalm suggests that your words, but also your deepest thoughts, your meditation of the heart, need to be aligned.
Aligned
with something bigger than just your immediate wants or fears, something solid, unchanging, the firm, immovable rock. It's about internal integrity, basically. Aligning yourself with your deepest values, maybe a higher purpose, before you act.
Okay, so it's like an internal check-in, making sure you're solid inside first.
Exactly. And that act of checking in, of ensuring your inner self is aligned with that stable foundation, that takes intention, it takes honesty, and actually it takes courage.
Courage just to look inward.
Yeah. It's courageous to really scrutinize whether your thoughts and motivations line up with the principles you claim to hold. It's easier to just react, right? So this prayer is like a pre-flight check for the soul. Get your inner compass set right before you take off.
I like that. Pre-flight check for the soul. So it's about building that authenticity, that solid core, so you're not just blown around by external stuff.
Yeah.
You act from purpose.
Precisely.
But okay, how does having that inner alignment, that immovable rock, actually helping you face really tough choices. Because that's where courage really gets tested, isn't it? When things get hard.
Absolutely. That's the crucible. When you have that deep internal anchor, your choices aren't just driven by panic or what everyone else is shouting or the immediate pressure. You have a reference point.
Like an anchor in a storm.
Exactly that analogy. Without the anchor, the storm tosses you everywhere. You just react. But with that internal alignment, that connection to your rock, you can pause, even in the chaos, and ask yourself, okay, what action here aligns with my deepest values? What's acceptable and pleasing in that sight?
Ah, I see. It gives you clarity.
Clarity, conviction, yeah. And a kind of moral resilience. It's essential for courage that isn't just, recklessness. Without that foundation, courage might just be impulsive. With it, it's principled, it's intentional. It gives you the why, even when the how looks terrifying.
Okay, speaking of terrifying hows and courageous action, this is where the deep dive takes a really interesting turn.
Right, the tonal shift.
Yeah. From this deep spiritual anchor, we jump straight into Stephen Pressfield analyzing a moment from The Wild Bunch, that 1969 Western.
And he calls the scene the shortest and maybe greatest hero speech ever, which is quite a claim.
It is. So for anyone who hasn't seen the film or maybe doesn't remember it, set the scene for us. What's happening in this iconic moment?
Okay, so context is key. It's Mexico, 1913. Revolution's brewing. We're with the last few members of this outlaw gang, the Wild Bunch, led by William Holden's character, Pike. There's also Ernest Borgnine, Ben Jonson, Warren Oates. These are tough, violent men, not your typical heroes.
Definitely not Robin Hoods, more like survivors, driven by their own code.
Exactly. And their companion, Angel, who's younger, more idealistic maybe, has been captured by this brutal warlord, Generalissimo Mapache, and his army, and the bunch. They had to watch Angel get dragged off and tortured. They were totally outnumbered, couldn't do a thing.
Awful. So they're powerless, watching their friends suffer. What happens next?
They spend this horrible, guilt-ridden night holed up in the same town as Mapache and his soldiers. Angel's still captive, probably facing death. The air is thick with tension, despair. These guys, they might be outlaws, but they have this fierce loyalty to each other. It's their chosen family.
That bond is everything to them.
It is. So dawn comes, and William Holden, Pike, the leader.
Yeah.
He just very deliberately starts strapping on his gun belt. No fanfare. He walks over to where Ben Jonson and Warren Oates' characters are, looking rough, hungover, probably feeling hopeless.
Yeah.
Holden looks Warren Oates right in the eye and says just 2 words, let's go.
Let's go. That's it.
That's the entire speech.
Right.
But everyone, the characters, the audience instantly gets the meaning. It's not, let's go grab some coffee. It's not, let's get out of here.
No, it means let's go get Angel.
Right. It means, let's walk right into Mapache's headquarters and take on his entire army to try and save our friend, even though we know it's suicide. We know we're not walking back out.
Wow. And what's the response?
Warren Oates just looks back, pauses for a beat, and says, why not?
Why not? Just as short, just as loaded.
Exactly. And Pressfield argues that this incredible brevity, it speaks volumes. It's profound heroism stripped bare. There's no debate, no weighing the odds, no big philosophical justification.
Because they don't need one. Their values, their code, already decided it for them.
Precisely. Their loyalty to Angel demands action, regardless of the consequences. It's courage as this quiet, steely resolve. They know the cost, certain death, but their integrity leaves them no other choice. They have to go.
We have this quote in our sources from Richter Avend. Courage is the magic that turns dreams into reality. And here, the dream for the Wild Bunch isn't wealth or escape.
No, the dream is fidelity. It's rescuing their friend, honoring their bond.
And it's a dream that demands the ultimate price. This really challenges the usual hero narrative, doesn't it? It's not about winning, it's about something else.
It completely flips the script on heroism. Usually we think of heroes winning, right? They overcome the odds, defeat the villain, right off victorious.
Yeah, the triumphant ending.
But the Wild Bunch scene throws that out. Their heroism isn't about beating Mapache's army. That's impossible. They know that. Their victory isn't external.
It's internal.
Yes. It's a victory over their own fear, their own instinct for self-preservation. It's about choosing to act on their deepest principle, loyalty, even when the cost is everything. Their heroism is in the act itself, the integrity of the choice, not the outcome. It's a victory of the soul, you could say, defining themselves by their code, even in death.
So courage isn't about not being afraid, it's about acting despite the fear, because something else matters more.
Perfectly put.
Which connects beautifully to another quote we have from Rochelle E. Goodrich. It takes just one star to pierce a universe of darkness. Such a powerful image. How does a single act of courage, like the bunch walking towards Mapashi's army, act like that star? How does it cut through darkness?
It's a fantastic metaphor for this. Think about the Wild Bunch's lives. They operate in moral gray areas. Often darkness, right? They're violent criminals.
For sure.
But this one, collective decision, this unspoken let's go, it's like that single star suddenly blazing in their murky universe. It's a moment of absolute moral clarity. It cuts through all the self-interest, the cynicism, the violence.
It illuminates something else in them.
Exactly. It illuminates their loyalty, their shared humanity, their willingness to sacrifice everything for that bond. For them, and for us watching, it transforms their story. They're not just thugs anymore. They become these tragic, almost noble figures in that moment. It proves that even in deep moral darkness, one act of principled courage can shine incredibly brightly, changing the whole narrative.
And for us listening, maybe it's about recognizing those moments in our own lives. Maybe not facing an army, but where a quiet resolve, a simple let's go to do the right hard thing.
Yeah.
Where that's more powerful than any big speech.
Yeah, what's the difficult let's go moment you might be putting off right now? A tough conversation. Starting that scary project. Choosing integrity when it's inconvenient.
It sets up this idea that courage is foundational. But raw courage needs direction, right? It needs a why beyond just grit, which leads us perfectly into the next section.
Right. So we have this powerful foundation of courage, but where do we point it? What gives it meaning beyond just, facing down danger? And this is where Leo Tolstoy comes in from his Calendar of Wisdom.
And Tolstoy makes this absolutely huge claim about love. He doesn't just see it as an emotion. He sees it as, well, a guiding force, a direction.
He really does. The quote is striking. That feeling which solves all of the contradictions of human life and gives one the greatest bliss is known to all people. This feeling is love.
Okay, solves all of the contradictions of human life. That's massive. He can't just mean romantic love, can he? What kind of love is he talking about? And how on earth does it solve all contradictions?
No, definitely not just romance. He's talking about a much bigger, more expansive kind of love. Think compassion, goodwill, connection, maybe even agape that unconditional, selfless love. And his point is radical. When you operate from that place, the internal conflicts that tear us apart start to dissolve.
What kind of conflicts? Like wanting to be honest, but being afraid of the fallout. Or wanting to help someone, but feeling like you don't have enough yourself.
Exactly, those kinds of things. The tension between self-interest and doing good for others. Between fear and taking necessary action. Between holding a grudge and forgiveness, between despair and hope. Tolstoy argues that when love, this expansive, active love, becomes your primary operating principle, it provides a higher perspective.
How so?
Well, take your example. Fear versus honesty. Fear is usually about protecting the self, right? But if your action is driven by genuine love, love for truth, love for the person you need to be honest with, love for your own integrity, then that self-protection impulse becomes secondary. The contradiction dissolves because the higher aim of love overrides the lower aim of fear. It reorients your whole internal compass.
So love acts like a solvent, dissolving the ego's boundaries and fears.
Universal solvent, I think that's a great way to put it. It melts away the hardened lines between me and you, mine and yours, fear and possibility.
And Tolstoy pushes this even further. He says, love destroys death and makes it empty. It gives meaning to senseless things. From unhappiness, love makes real happiness. Again, huge claims. How does love destroy death? How does it give meaning to senseless suffering?
Okay, so destroying death, he likely means it diminishes the fear of death, the sting of personal annihilation. When you connect deeply through love to other people, to a cause, to nature, to something you see as eternal or spiritual, you experience yourself as part of something much larger than your individual ego.
Ah, so you're not just this isolated self that will end.
Exactly. You feel part of an ongoing flow, an interconnected web. Your acts of love ripple outwards. They have meaning beyond your own lifespan. So the ego's terror of simply ceasing to exist gets softened, made somewhat empty, because you feel connected to something that continues.
Okay, that makes sense. And giving meaning to senseless things like random suffering or tragedy.
Yeah, life throws horrible, seemingly meaningless suffering at us. Love doesn't magically erase the pain or the injustice, but how we respond to that suffering through the lens of love gives it meaning. When you meet suffering your own or someone else's with compassion, with presence, with care, with a commitment to connect through the pain, that act of loving connection is never senseless.
It transforms the experience.
It transforms the experience from sheer pointless agony into potentially a crucible for profound human connection, empathy, growth, and expressing the deepest forms of love. That's how love can turn even deep unhappiness into a form of real happiness, not by denying the pain, but by infusing it with purpose and connection.
There's another related quote here from Henri Amiel. Fire purifies everything in the material world. Love purifies everything in the spiritual world. That's a beautiful metaphor. Love as a purifying agent for the soul.
It's perfect, isn't it? Think about what fire does to raw ore, burns away the impurities, the dross, leaving the pure metal stronger and more refined. Amiel suggests love does the same for our inner world, our spiritual selves.
What kind of impurities does it burn away?
Things like selfishness, resentment, fear, judgment, petty jealousy, the urge to blame others, all that internal gunk that weighs us down and clouds our vision. When we consciously choose to act from love, we're essentially performing an act of inner alchemy. We're cleansing our motivations, refining our intentions, elevating our way of being.
And that purification makes us better, happier.
Both, I think. It allows us to see more clearly, respond more constructively, and experience a deeper, more resilient kind of well-being. Because we're not constantly dragged down by those negative inner states. It's an ongoing process of refining the self.
And this idea of purification, of choosing love, leads to a very practical, almost confrontational application from Amiel. Pay bad people with your goodness.
Yeah.
Fight their hatred with your kindness.
Yeah, that's tough.
It is, he continues. Even if you do not achieve victory over other people, you will conquer yourself. Now, this links straight back to the courage theme, like with the Wild Bunch. But it's a totally different kind of courage. The bunch used violence. Amiel is talking about winning through kindness. That takes incredible inner strength, surely.
Maybe even more inner strength in some ways. Facing external enemies with force, like the Wild Bunch, is one kind of courage, tangible, physical. But Amiel's path demands an internal battle, a fight for self-mastery.
How so?
Well, think about it. When someone treats you badly, when they hit you with hatred, what's the instinctive gut reaction?
To hit back, to hate back. Self-preservation kicks in.
Exactly. So to consciously choose in that moment to respond with goodness, with kindness, that requires you to override your deepest, most primal impulses. It's a massive act of will, of self-conquest. You're choosing to operate from your higher self, not your reactive ego.
And the victory isn't about changing the other person.
No, Amiel is clear on that. They might change, they might not. The real victory, the guaranteed victory, is internal. It's conquering your own lower nature, your own reactivity. That's the profound transformation. And that kind of self-mastery is arguably the most powerful and lasting form of courage because it changes you fundamentally.
Wow. Okay. And Tolstoy really drives this home, linking love directly to our mental and emotional health. He says bluntly, the less love a person has, the more he suffers.
It's almost like a psychological law he's proposing.
Yeah, it suggests love isn't just a nice to have, it's essential, like a vitamin for the soul. And if we withhold it from others, or maybe even from ourselves, we actually cause our own suffering.
It's a powerful idea. We tend to think of suffering as something that happens to us from the outside, bad luck, difficult people, tough situations. But Tolstoy flips it. He suggests a huge chunk of our internal suffering. Anxiety, fear, resentment, loneliness stems directly from a deficit of love within us.
A deficit in giving love, or receiving it, or maybe self-love too.
All of the above, I think. It implies that cultivating and expressing love is fundamental to our psychological balance. When we're closed off, withholding compassion, trapped in judgment or fear, we create our own internal prison, our own state of suffering. It puts the locus of control and responsibility squarely back on us.
Which leads to his almost unbelievably simple yet revolutionary piece of advice for when you're feeling low or scared or tormented.
Yeah, this one is stunning. He says, if you are in a difficult situation, a low mood, if you are afraid of other people and of yourself, if you are tormented, then tell yourself, I will love everyone whom I meet in this life.
Hell, you're all that.
Yes. And then he says, try to follow this rule and you will see that everything will find its way and everything will seem simple and you will no longer have doubts or fears.
That sounds almost too easy. Like, just deciding to love everyone makes fear and doubt vanish. How did that actually work psychologically?
It's not about magically conjuring up warm, fuzzy feelings for every single person instantly. It's more tactical than that. It's about making a conscious declaration, a commitment, to shift your fundamental stance towards the world and the people in it.
Shifting from what to what?
From a default posture of defensiveness, suspicion, judgment, fear, which is often where we go when we're stressed or feeling low, to a default posture of openness, goodwill, and compassion.
So it's a change in intention, a change in approach.
Exactly. It's deciding. My starting point for interacting with everyone I meet today will be one of loving intention, even if they seem difficult, even if I feel scared. And that decision, that conscious choice, starts to change your internal landscape immediately. Because you stop feeding the fear-based narratives quite so much. When your default is goodwill, you're less likely to misinterpret neutral signals as hostile. You're less likely to feel personally attacked by everything. Your internal state becomes calmer, less agitated by the constant what-ifs and negative projections.
And the doubts and fears.
They often stem from that defensive, self-focused state. When you shift to a more open, loving stance, you're taking the fuel away from those doubts and fears. You become more resilient because your well-being isn't solely dependent on external validation or circumstances being perfect. You're generating a positive internal state through your own intention. It puts you back in the driver's seat of your own experience. It's profound self-mastery, really.
Okay, so we've got courage as the engine of the foundation.
Yeah.
And love is the steering wheel, the direction, transforming the journey.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we actually, drive the car? How do we translate this into effective, disciplined action day to day?
Right. This is where the rubber meets the road. We move into the method. And Seth Godin kicks us off with a real wake-up call for modern life. He says, the calendar belongs to everyone else. Their schedule isn't your schedule unless it helps you get where you're going.
Oof. Yeah, that hits hard. My calendar definitely feels like it belongs to everyone but me sometimes. Meetings, requests, demands. It's relentless.
It's the default state for many of us, isn't it? Pulled in 100 different directions by other people's priorities.
Totally. And Godin saying, what? Just ignore everyone else. That doesn't seem practical.
No, it's not about becoming a hermit or completely shirking responsibility. It's about becoming fiercely intentional about where your time and energy go. It takes real courage, linking back to Section 1, to say no to things, even things that seem urgent, if they don't actually align with your purpose, your destination.
And it takes love, too, right? Like love for your own work, your own well-being, to actually prioritize it.
Absolutely. You need that love for your authentic calling to justify protecting time for it amidst all the noise. The discipline here is the constant vigilance, the ongoing questioning. Does this meeting, this task, this request, does it genuinely serve my core goals and values, or am I just letting someone else drive my schedule?
It's a daily battle, distinguishing the truly important from the merely urgent, or the stuff that just fills the space, because the urgent stuff always seems to shout louder.
It does. It demands immediate attention. So you have to consciously, deliberately carve out space for the important, which often doesn't have an immediate deadline, but is crucial for long-term progress and fulfillment. It's about reclaiming ownership of your time.
And this connects directly to another sharp observation in the sources, a question we should probably all ask ourselves. Are you inventing things to do to avoid the important work?
Ah, yes. The seductive trap of productive procrastination.
Right. Tidying the desk, endlessly checking email, reorganizing files.
Mm-hmm.
It feels productive, but is it really? Or is it just a way to avoid the hard stuff?
It's often exactly that, a very common, very human form of self-deception. We mistake motion for progress. We fill our time with comfortable, low-stakes tasks because the important work, well, that's usually uncomfortable.
Why is the important work so uncomfortable?
Because it almost always involves stepping into uncertainty. It means risking failure. It might mean confronting our own limitations, admitting we don't have all the answers. It could involve having difficult conversations, challenging the status quo, or putting something truly vulnerable out into the world.
Stuff that makes us feel exposed.
Exactly. It's much safer, much cozier to just stay busy with the familiar, easy stuff. So it takes courage, again, the courage to acknowledge this avoidance pattern, to face the discomfort and the risk, and to commit to doing the work that actually matters, even when it feels daunting.
So the goal isn't just to be busy, it's to be effectively busy, focused on what truly moves the needle towards our purpose.
Precisely. Which leads beautifully into Coach Dan John's rather countercultural insight. Deprivation builds capacity.
Yeah, that one jumps out because everything today seems geared towards comfort, ease, getting things instantly. What does he mean? Deprivation builds capacity.
He's directly challenging that comfort-seeking default. His point is that by deliberately choosing to do difficult things, to deprive ourselves of immediate comfort or ease, we actually strengthen ourselves. We expand our capacity to handle challenges.
Like lifting weights builds muscle. The stress makes you stronger.
That's the perfect analogy. Physical training involves depriving your muscles of comfort through exertion, and that stress forces them to adapt and grow stronger. Dan John argues the same principle applies mentally, emotionally, even spiritually.
So give me some examples. What kind of deprivation?
It could be anything that pushes you out of your comfort zone. Getting up an hour earlier to write or exercise when you'd rather stay in bed. Choosing the difficult conversation instead of avoiding it. Sticking with a challenging project when you feel like quitting. Maybe even fasting from distractions like social media or excessive entertainment.
So voluntarily choosing discomfort.
Yes. Not for the sake of suffering, but for the sake of building internal muscle, mental toughness, emotional resilience, spiritual fortitude. And the crucial part is, this capacity you build through chosen difficulties serves you incredibly well when you face the unchosen difficulties life inevitably throws your way.
Like illness or loss or unexpected crises.
Exactly. When those storms hit, you're not starting from scratch. You've already developed the inner strength, the resilience, the grit to navigate them more effectively because you've been training in the peacetime of your deliberate choices.
That's a really powerful reframe. Embrace the voluntary struggle to prepare for the involuntary one.
Precisely. And then Sir William Osler ties present effort directly to future outcomes with his famous line, "The best preparation for tomorrow is to do today's work superbly well."
Superbly well. That sounds a bit intimidating. Does he mean perfection?
I don't think it's about perfectionism, which can be paralyzing. I think superbly well means bringing your full presence, your best effort, your genuine care and attention to whatever task is in front of you right now.
Whether it's a big project or something small and mundane.
Yes. Whether it's writing a crucial report, having a sensitive conversation, or even, washing the dishes, approach it with excellence, with focus, with respect for the task itself.
And doing that prepares you for tomorrow. How?
Because you're constantly practicing. You're building habits of discipline, focus, and attention to detail. You're honing your skills. You're cultivating a reputation for quality and reliability. You're embedding a standard of excellence into your way of being. These aren't just about completing today's tasks. They are the fundamental building blocks that create capability and open doors for tomorrow's opportunities. It's about the quality of engagement in the present moment.
Showing up fully, basically.
That's it. Showing up fully to whatever is right in front of you.
Okay, so we have the courageous foundation, the loving direction, and now these methods for disciplined, focused action. How do we pull all these threads together into a single, coherent approach to living? All right, so we've journeyed through these really diverse sources, ancient prayers, Westerns, Russian philosophy, modern productivity hacks. When you stand back and look at it all, it's striking how they're not just separate nuggets of wisdom. They actually seem to lock together, don't they?
They really do. It's like finding different puzzle pieces that surprisingly form a coherent picture, a working philosophy for, meaningful action.
Yeah. Let's try and map that out. How did the pieces fit? The psalm gives us the why, maybe. The context.
Exactly. Psalms 19 sets that spiritual or ethical stage. It asks us to align our inner world, our thoughts, our intentions with something higher, our deepest values, our immovable rock. It establishes the purpose behind our actions, striving for integrity, for resonance with something greater than just ourselves.
Okay, so that's the foundation. Then how do we act on that?
That's where courage comes in. And the Wild Bunch gives us that raw, visceral example. It shows courage not as bravado, but as acting on your core values like loyalty, even when it's incredibly costly, even when it seems futile. It's the catalyst that turns intention into action.
But courage without direction can be dangerous.
It can be blind, yeah. Or even destructive. So what guides the courage? What ensures it's constructive, transformative? That's Tolstoy's expansive love. It provides the moral compass. It shifts the focus from self-preservation or aggression towards connection, compassion, and healing. Love directs our courage towards something positive and purifying.
Okay, so foundation, psalm, catalyst, Wild Bunch, direction, Tolstoy, Mill. Then how do we actually do it day to day?
And that's where Godin, John, and Osler come in with the practical methods. Godin tells us to reclaim our schedule, to be intentional with our time. The unnamed source warns us against mistaking busyness for important work, fighting self-deception. Dan John teaches us to build capacity by embracing difficulty. And Osler reminds us to bring excellence and presence to today's tasks. They give us the how-to.
So it's like a complete system. Why psalm? What? Courage Wild Bunch, guided by Love Tolstoy, and how? Go to Jonesler.
Exactly. Each part supports and reinforces the others. It's not just a collection of nice ideas, it's a functional architecture for living with intention, impact, and meaning.
And if it's a system, we need a way to operate it daily. The source material actually gives us a really practical tool for this 3 daily self-check questions.
Yes, these are fantastic. Simple, but incredibly powerful if you actually use them consistently. They act like a daily compass.
Okay, walk us through them. What's the first question?
The first is, what would it look like to bring courage to today's challenges?
Right, so that immediately makes you scan your day ahead, doesn't it? Where are the potential sticking points? Where might fear or hesitation show up?
Precisely. It prompts you to identify where you need to consciously step up, to act in line with your values, even if it feels uncomfortable. It's about finding your personal let's go moments for the day. Maybe that difficult email, starting that project, speaking your truth. It activates your courageous self.
Okay, makes sense. What's the second question?
Number 2, how can I approach the people I encounter with love, especially those who seem difficult or hostile?
Bringing in the Tolstoy in a meal. This directly challenges our knee-jerk reactions, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It pulls you back from judgment, annoyance, or defensiveness, especially with people who trigger you. It invites you to consciously choose a different response: kindness, goodwill, compassion. To practice that conquering yourself that Emil talked about.
And reminding yourself that choosing love can actually reduce your own internal friction, your own fear and doubt.
Exactly. It's about transforming the interaction by transforming your own stance first.
And the third question, this one feels very grounded in the methods section.
Yes. What is the most important work I can do today? And how can I distinguish it from the merely urgent tasks that compete for my attention?
The core challenge Godin highlighted.
Right. This question forces that crucial pause for reflection and prioritization. It helps you cut through the noise of busyness, resist the temptation to just invent things to do, and focus your disciplined energy on the tasks that truly align with your purpose and long-term goals. The work that requires focus and maybe a bit more courage.
So these 3 questions, courage, love, and purposeful action used daily, they really could steer your entire day towards more meaning.
They absolutely can. They're navigational tools for intentional living. Use them honestly, consistently. They're transformative.
The synthesis also touches on this idea of embracing struggle. There's a quote, seek struggle to make the good times last. That sounds painful. Why seek struggle?
It ties back to Dan John's deprivation builds capacity. The idea isn't masochism. It's that actively engaging with challenges, pushing our limits voluntarily, builds the resilience and strength needed to navigate all times, good and bad. If you only ever experience ease, you don't develop the capacity to handle hardship when it inevitably arrives.
So the struggle builds the muscles needed to maintain stability, even during good times, preventing complacency.
Precisely. And this connects to that cyclical view of history mentioned. Hard times create strong men. Strong men create easy times. Easy times create soft men. Soft men create hard times.
Right, that famous cycle.
Yeah.
How do our personal choices about embracing or avoiding struggle fit into that bigger picture? Can my choice to say get up early and write actually affect that cycle?
On an individual level, absolutely, and collectively, yes. If a generation or a society consistently chooses comfort over challenge, ease over effort, avoidance over engagement, what happened?
They become weaker, less capable, soft, as the saying goes.
Exactly. Less resilient, less innovative, less able to cope when faced with real adversity. This individual softening contributes to a collective weakening, making society more vulnerable and potentially ushering in those hard times.
So, by choosing personal struggle, by building our own capacity,
we become those strong men and women, not just for our own benefit, but we contribute to a stronger, more resilient family, community, society. We're better equipped to solve problems, lead with integrity, and maintain stability. Our individual choices to embrace difficulty ripple outwards. They help build and sustain the easy times and potentially break that negative cycle. It connects personal responsibility directly to collective well-being.
That adds a whole other layer of meaning to facing daily challenges. It's not just personal growth, it's contributing to something bigger. Okay, so we have this incredible framework: courage, love, disciplined action, the daily questions, understanding struggle. But let's be real, putting this into practice perfectly every day, it's not going to happen.
Not a chance. We're human. We'll mess up. We'll fall short.
Which is where Ken Blanchard's insight comes in, is absolutely crucial. Feedback is the breakfast of champions. Why is feedback so vital here?
Because it's the learning mechanism. Without feedback, we're just operating in a vacuum. We might have the best intentions, acting with courage, trying to be loving, focusing on what we think is important, but we might be completely missing the mark.
Right. Our actions might not have the intended effect.
Yeah.
Or we might be fooling ourselves about our motives.
Exactly. Feedback, whether it's hearing how our actions impacted someone else, seeing the actual results of our efforts, or even just doing some rigorous, honest self-reflection, gives us the data we need to adjust course. It tells us what's working, what isn't, and maybe why. Without it, we just keep repeating the same patterns, reinforcing potentially ineffective habits, even with good intentions.
So feedback closes the loop. It allows for growth.
It's the essential ingredient for growth. It prevents stagnation and keeps us grounded in reality, not just our own internal narrative.
So describe that learning cycle. We act using this framework. Then what?
Okay, so you act. You make the courageous choice. You approach the situation with love. You focus on the important work. Step 1. Then, step 2. You consciously observe the results.
Both external and internal results.
Yes, externally. What actually happened? How did others respond? Did you achieve the outcome you hoped for? And internally, how did it feel? Did your actions feel aligned with your values? Did you notice any resistance or self-deception popping up?
Okay, observe.
Yeah.
Step 3, seek feedback. This might be explicit, asking a trusted friend or mentor, how did that land with you? Or it might be implicit, carefully considering the observed results. Or it could be deep self-reflection, maybe journaling.
Right.
What did I learn from that? What went well? What could I do differently?
Got it. Observe, get feedback, reflect. And finally,
Step 4, adjust. Based on what you learned, you refine your approach. Maybe you need a different kind of courage next time. Maybe your expression of love needs tweaking. Maybe you need to be clearer about what's truly important. You integrate the learning. And then you loop back to step 1. You act again, but this time with hopefully a bit more wisdom, a bit more skill, a bit more clarity.
so it's not a straight line, it's a cycle. Act, observe, feedback, adjust, act again. Constantly. It's an iterative process of continuous improvement. Not about achieving perfection, but about staying engaged in the process of learning and growing.
Which brings us to maybe the most liberating point of all.
Yeah,
This whole thing isn't about being perfect. It's about the willingness to engage, right?
absolutely. The pressure is off, having it all figured out before you start. You don't need to be a paragon of courage or a boundless source of love from day one.
What do you need then?
You need the courage to start. Just to take that first small step, to try. You need the love for yourself, for the process, for the goal to sustain you when it gets hard, to keep you oriented. And you need the discipline to keep showing up, to stay focused on what matters amidst the distractions, and crucially, to stay engaged in that learning cycle.
So courage to start, love to sustain, discipline to focus and learn. That's enough.
That is absolutely sufficient. This whole architecture we've discussed, it's a set of tools, not a pass-fail exam. It's available to anyone right now, wherever they are, who is willing to pick up those tools and start building. The journey itself, the act of trying to live with more courage, love, and purpose, that's the meaningful part. The growth happens in the striving, not in reaching some mythical state of perfection.
It's about the process, not the destination.
Exactly. The willingness to begin, to learn, to persist, that's where the magic lies. Hashtag tag outro.
Wow. So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, reflecting on all these threads from July 8th, it really hammers home that living a meaningful life isn't some endpoint you reach one day.
No, definitely not a destination.
It's much more about the daily choices, isn't it? How we engage with each moment. Every day gives us these fresh chances, these opportunities.
To choose courage, even in small ways. To choose a loving stance, even when it's tough. To choose to put our energy into what genuinely matters, cutting through the noise.
And all these voices, we heard the psalmist Pressfield talking about outlaws, Tolstoy, Amiel, Godin, Osler, Dan Johns. They're all pointing to the same core truth, really. That we're not just passively experiencing life, we're active creators of our experience. We have this incredible power through our conscious choices moment by moment to shape not only our own lives, but to impact the world around us.
Yeah, the wisdom synthesized from this date, July 8th, it's a powerful reminder of our agency. It's a constant invitation, really, to step up and consciously build that architecture of a meaningful life, day by day.
So maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to take away and chew on. Something that really gets to the heart of today's deep dive.
Go for it.
Okay, in what areas of your life right now might you be substituting busy work, organizing, planning, scrolling, tweaking for the truly important work? You know, the kind of work that feels a bit scary, the kind that would require more courage, perhaps that act of self-conquest Emil mentioned, and maybe a clearer, more intentional love for what genuinely matters deep down to you.
That's a great question to sit with. Where is busyness masking fear or avoidance?
Exactly. And just consider, how might shifting your focus even slightly from one piece of comfortable busy work towards that more challenging important work,
Yeah.
how might that single shift begin to transform your day, your week, maybe even your life?
It's not about judging yourself, but about honest reflection and remembering that learning cycle. Try some things, see what happens, adjust.
Right, because with that, courage is the foundation.
And that expansive love as the direction.
And disciplined, focused action, including that feedback loop, is the method.
You really do have the power. The power to transform your own experience and, honestly, to make a positive difference in the world.
It's the daily invitation, isn't it? To let our words, our thoughts, our actions align with what feels highest and best. To use that courage, love, and purpose to, as Richard Evans said, turn dreams into reality.
A powerful invitation indeed.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. Until next time.